Hello learners, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Myself Simran from Team CloudML, and today we are going to see a Python interview question, and this question was asked by the company NetSpi. So let's begin. This is the question. First let's read out the question and then I'll explain you the question in detail. Write a function that checks whether a given sequence of number is IP address or not, and then print all valid possible IP from a given digit. If not an IP, then it prints an empty list. Okay, so we have to create a function that will check whether a given IP address is a valid IP address or not. And if it is a valid IP address, then it will generate all the possible IP addresses from the given digit. If the IP address is not an IP address, then it will print an empty list. So what is an IP address exactly? IP address is a unique address for every device, okay, which helps in communication or making transactions with other devices. So, according to Wikipedia, IPv4 addresses are canonically represented in dot decimal notation, which consists of four decimal numbers, each ranging from 0 to 255, separated by dots. Okay, so it is having four parts, okay, which are separated by dots. You can see here we have the example 172.16.254.1. So here each number, okay, between the points is ranging from 0 to 255. Correct? See, 172 is between 0 and 255. 16 is also between 0 and 255. 254 is also between 0 and 255. Correct? And the length of each of these numbers can be less than 3 and greater than 0. And the total digits can be 12. They cannot be more than 12 digits. Because why? Because only 4 parts can be present and each part can be only up till 3 digits. So let's see an example. So here the input is given as 255.255.111.35. So what our code should do? It should first check whether it is a valid IP or not, and then after checking, it should give the possible IP addresses that can be made out of this digit. So these are the two possible IP addresses. Here you can see all the conditions in these two IP addresses are satisfied. Okay, whatever conditions are required for an IP to be a valid IP are satisfied. 255, 11 is between 0 and 255, and 135 is also between 0 and 255. Similarly, here also we have 255, 255, 111, and 35. Both are between 0 and 255. Okay, so now let's begin with the code. What we will be doing is first let's create a function that will check whether our IP address is valid or not. Let me zoom in. So the function name is valid. First we will be coding down the code and then we will look at its implementation step by step. So after defining the function, what we will be doing is we will be breaking down the IP digits in 4 parts, okay, based on the dot. So we will be using the split function wherein it will split based on the dot. What logic we are going to use in this is, first I'll explain to you that what we are going to do is first we are going to define the isValid function. As I told you, in the isValid function we will be checking 3 parameters. So first will be that each part should be less than should be greater than 3. Correct? Each part of the number, the length should be greater than 3, and the digits should be between 0 to 225. 0 to 225. So this will be the first parameter. Next parameter will be that the length of each part should be greater than 1, and the part itself should not be equal to 0. So the length should be greater than 1. Okay, it can be 2, it can be 3. So this will be less than, the length should be less than 3. Okay, so here in the second parameter, the length should be greater than 1 and the digit should not be equal to 0. Okay, if it is, the digit is equal to 0, then it would not be considered as a valid IP. And the third parameter shall be that if the length is also greater than 1 and if the digit is also equal to 0, and now the first digit, okay, suppose the parameter is I, the digit is I, so the first digit in the part should not be equal to 0. Okay, then and only then it will be considered as a valid IP. Okay, so this will be the first function. In the next function, and if all these parameters are not passed, then it will be true. Now the next part will be the convert function. In the convert function, we will be converting the valid IP into a number of IP addresses that can be formed of the given digit. So for that, what we will be doing, first we will be considering the length of the given digit, and then we will be breaking down what we can say, the digit into various parts to find out the valid IP. Okay, so we will be running 3 loops. First will be the I, then J, then K along the length of the IP, okay, the given IP, and then we will be using the splicing technique to find out a new IP, okay, and then we will check if this new IP is valid or not. If it is valid, then and only then we will give this IP into the list, and then the final output will be this list, which is L. Okay, so let's see let's see the code of this, and then we will implement the code as well. So after splitting, what this split will do is it will create 4 parts of the given digit of the given IP. Now we will be applying these 3 rules or parameters what we have written over here. We will be applying this in the code to check whether it is a valid IP or not. So for I in IP, first will be that length should be greater than 3, correct? So if length of I is greater than 3, sorry, the length should be less than 3. So here we are considering that the length is greater than 3, or int of I, which means the digit itself is less than 0, which means it is negative, or the int of I is greater than 255. Okay, if you see in the question itself, we are given that the digit should be ranging between 2 to 220, 0 to 255, correct? So we are checking that if it is less than 255 or greater than 255. If these 3 conditions are true, then our function should return false, because this will be not a valid IP. Because for a valid IP, each part should have a length of less than 3, it should be greater than 0 or less than 255. Correct? So next, let's check the next condition. If length of I is greater than 1, okay, and the next, the another condition was that int of I will be exactly equal to 0. So if it is exactly equal to 0, it cannot be a valid IP. So here in this case also we will return a false. Next we were having that Now if the length of I is greater than 1, okay, and int of I is also not equal to 0, but the first digit of the part is equal to 0, then it cannot be considered as a valid IP. Here I of 0 means first digit of the given part. If this is equal to 0, then this cannot be considered as a valid IP. So it will return as false. Correct? And finally, if all these conditions are not satisfied, then the code should return true. True. Okay. So now we've done with the isValid function. Now it's time for the convert function. So simply write the def convert, and in this we need to pass the string. Here also we will pass the IP, and here we will be passing the string which we have to convert. First, let's take the sz, which is the length of the given string, and with this, if first I had mentioned that the length, sorry, this will be s. The entire length of a given IP address should not exceed 12, but if the length of the given string is only greater than 12, then there is no meaning of converting the string into IP address and then checking whether it is valid or not. It would definitely be invalid. Why? Because the length is only greater than 12. But according to certain norms, the total length of IP address should be less than 12. It should not be greater than 12 because IP address is in 4 parts having 3 digits each. So 4 into 3 is 12. So we will check if sz is greater than 12, then it will simply return a empty list. Why? Because digits are greater than 12. So it cannot be a valid IP. So we will return a empty list. Correct? But if it is not greater than 12, so we will create a new string which is snew. Here snew, and then we will also create a new list wherein we will be storing the possible IP addresses. Next, now we will be starting with the iteration, the for loop. Okay, so for I in range, first we will begin with 1 and start with sz minus 2, which is the length of the string minus 2. Again, we will be making another for loop wherein now we will begin from I plus 1, which means the next digit after I, and sz minus 1, which means now we are moving one step forward. Again, we will have k, and now we will begin from j plus 1, which means one step ahead of j, and we will end at sz. And what we will be generating? We will be simply generating new part of the given string. How? We'll be taking the part before k, plus we will be adding a dot into it, because you know that IP addresses are separated by dot, and then we will be taking the part after kth digit. Similarly, we will do this for j also. So I'll simply copy paste this. This is for j, and similarly for I as well. Don't worry, you will understand that why this has been done after we implement the code. Okay, when I will implement the code step by step, you will definitely understand that why all these steps are performed. Now, after creating these IP addresses, we also need to check whether these are valid or not. So what we will do is, if is valid, we had created a function for checking whether a given IP address is valid or not. So what we will do, if is valid is new, which means if this S new is valid, then it will append this S new in the L, the list that we had created, S new, correct? And then also don't forget to substitute the given S new with S. And then finally, you have to return the L, which is the list. Okay, so this is the function, the two functions, and we will simply now check the code with some string. So let's take the string that is given in the example, in the sample input. And use the convert function, convert A. Now let's run this to see whether we are getting the correct output. According to the sample output, we should get these two values in the list. So one parenthesis is missing. Here also. Okay, so we have got the correct output here. So you see, these are the two valid IP addresses that we have also got in the sample output. Okay, and the similar output we have also got with the code. So let's look into the implementation part of this now. So just let me clear this. Now let's implement this code. Okay, so we will be just using the example that we have mentioned in the code to implement the code line by line. So when we start implementing the code, we are executing the convert function, correct? So the control or the implementation will begin from the convert function. So first, let's write down the input. The input is the string A. Okay? The input will always be in the string form, and this is the string 255 255 11135. Okay, so it is 255 255 11135. Right? After starting with the function, the first step is to find out the length of the string. Okay, so in our case, the length of the string, which is sz, is equals to, count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So the length of the string is 11. Next, we need to check whether the length of the string is greater than 12 or not. If it is greater than 12, then you need to return an empty list. Why? Because we had seen three conditions of a valid string, of a valid IP. So if the length of the IP is greater than 12, then it is not a valid IP. Why? Because a valid IP has four parts of length 3 each. So 4 into 3 is 12. So that is why the total length of the IP address should be less than or equal to 12. Okay, so if it is greater than 12, then we return an empty string. So as we know that the length of our string is 11, which is less than 12. So this will not return an empty string. So what it will do? It will create a new variable s new, wherein it will store the value of s, and it will also create an empty list L. So here we create s new. S new is nothing but the same 255 255 11135. Okay, and it will create an empty list L. This L will be storing the final output values. Next, we start with the iteration. First, the iteration is started from 1 up till sz minus 2. So simply let's write it down. For I in 1 comma sz minus 2. Over here will be 11 minus 2, which is 9. So the first value of I will be 1, correct? Next, the next for loop is for j in I plus 1 and sz minus 1. So here I plus 1 first will be 2 because the value of I is 1. So 2 comma sz minus 1. Sz minus 1 will be 11 minus 1, 10. So the current value of j will be 2. Similarly, for k in, now the k loop will be from j plus 1 up till sz. So here j plus 1 will be 3, comma the sz itself, which is 11. So the current k value will be 3. So after giving all the 3 loops, the next step is updating the snew value. And how it is updating? See, here first it will consider the previous part from k. See here, slicing is done. This means that all the values before this kth index will be considered. It will be joined with a dot, and after that all the values after the kth index, see here the after part is empty, no index is given. So all the values after k will be considered. How? I'll show you. See, here k is 3. So consider the kth index. So here in the S new, the kth index will be 0, 1, 2, 3. This will be the kth index. So what it will do, it will update the snew like this. Snew now will be all the strings before k. So the strings before k are 255. It will put a dot and then all the strings after k. See, 2 up from considering k also. So 255, 11135. This will be the new updation. Next, again it will update based on j and again based on I in a similar manner. So this new based on this SNU, based on the updated SNU, it will update. So j is 2. So this is the second index. So it will become 25.5.255.11135. Again it will be done on I. So I here is 1. So this is the first index. So the new SNU will be 2.5.5.255.11135. Now, after all the 3 updations, the next step in the code is to check whether the SNU is valid or not. Okay, whether the IP address is valid or not. So, see, if you notice, then the fourth part here has a length of greater than 3. Here the length is greater than 3. So what does this mean? It is not a valid IP. Okay. So this is not a valid IP. What it will do, it will skip this append and it will update the SNU as the original string. So now the SNU will be back to its original form. This will be the original string. Next, it will increment the k value. Okay, don't be in a hurry to increment the I value, because the k, once the k loop is complete, then it will complete the j loop, then the I. So now the value of k will be first incremented. The value of k now will be 4. And again SNU will be updated based on the 4th index. So here this is the 4th index. The updation will be 255 2 point, all values before this 4th index, then 551135. Again it will update based on j. So the j value hasn't been incremented, it is 2 only. So it will update based on this second index. So it will be 25.52.551135. Next, it will be updated based on I. So now I is 1 only. So this is the first index. So it will be 2.5.52.551135. Okay. So in this case also, if you notice, then this is greater than 3. So this is not a valid IP. Again, the S new will take its original form and K will be incremented to 5. All the steps will be followed. It will be checked whether S new is valid or not, and then again it will check if it is valid, and if it is not valid, then it will update the S new to its original form, or if it is valid, then it will append it to this L list. So let's consider that now the K value is the final value, which is 10. Correct? The maximum value that K can take is 10. Why? Because 11 is the upper limit. So now let's update S new based on 10. So if you see, the 10th index will be the last index, 5. So it will be like 255, 255, 111, 3.5. Now the S new will be updated based on J. J hasn't been incremented, it is 2. So the second index over here is this. So it will be 25.5255, Again, it will be updated based on I. I value is 1. This index, so 2.5.5255, So if you see here, the third part, the length is greater than 3. So this is also not a valid IP. Okay. So now once the K loop is completed, the values of J will be incremented. Okay. So when the values of J will be incremented, again the entire loop for K will be performed. Okay. Once the value of J is 3, suppose after this loop the value of J will be 3. Correct? So for 3, all the values of K will be considered. K is equals to 3 from 3. Sorry, K from 4, because K has to be considered from J plus 1. So if J is 3, then K will be considered from 4 up till 11. So the possible values of K will be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So for J is equals to 3, all the values of K will be considered. Again the loop will be performed. Again, if the value of J becomes 4, then K, the values of K will be from 5, 6 up till 10. All the values of K, all the loops will be performed. When the value of J is incremented as 5, then the values of K will be 6 up till 10. So in this form, all the 3 loops are performed. So this code will take, for implementing, it is not possible to implement this code manually line by line. So that's why I've shown you just several examples. Like this method will be followed to find out the valid IP. Okay, how the breakdown will take place of the string, how indexing will be done, and a valid IP will be found out. Okay, so for I value also, for the loop I also, consider that suppose I is incremented to 2. Then again J, all the values of J from 3 will be considered. So 3 up till 9. Like that, it will go on continuously, okay, to get the valid IP. So I hope you have understood this code and this solution as well. And let's consider this one example also. Let's see that what is the output in this case. It is a different example from the example that we have considered. So let's see what output it is giving. So if you see the second example is giving an empty string. What does it mean? There are no valid IP addresses that can be formed from this string. That is why it is giving an empty string. Okay. So I hope you have understood this example. Do practice it on your own. If you have any doubts, you can ask it in the comment section. And do like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe the channel for more such content. Thank you.